With Werewolves coming out soon, let's use this opportunity to learn about each other's cultures. What I want to see in the comment section of this video are legends, stories, experiences, different myths from your culture, no matter where in the world you are. Well, relating to werewolves. I asked this question already on Reddit, Twitter, and also here on YouTube, and I got some very interesting responses. I shared mine first, and then I'm about to share other people's stories about werewolves. Yeah, so I'll go first. Now, in my language, which is Croatian, werewolves are called vukodlak, which quite literally translates to the one with wolf's hair. Now, I found that in a lot of other Slavic languages, they use either the same word or a very similar one. Same goes for the legends. Some can be found in other Slavic cultures as well, sometimes with like slight differences. Now, there are two ways that I've found that one could become a werewolf. First is to be a specific type of a witch that is called striga. Striga can be both man or a woman, and they can be born with supernatural powers, or they can learn the craft. It is very hard to find out who is actually striga, because during the day, strigas live just like all other people. During the night, they shapeshift into different creatures, one of them being a werewolf.
Strigas are often blamed for the children's deaths, people ending their relationships, and even of bringing disease to the farm animals and causing hail. When a person who is believed to be a strigun dies, people place a metal nail in their mouth to prevent them from rising up from the graves.
Strigas do have a counterpart though, so a good witch / shaman that are here to help plants, animals, and people, and they're called krsnik.
Once the child turns 7, grown krsniks will come to its home and call out its name and awake that which lies within. But if the child isn't home 3 times at the time of its name-calling ritual, the magic within will disappear.
They live their lives normally, like all other people, and are mostly veterinarians, doctors, and herbalists. Generally, krsniks are way more powerful than strigas. So, if a person had an issue with strigas, they would call krsnik. Second way to become a werewolf is after death. When an extremely evil person dies, they are believed to turn into horrible creatures. There's several ways that this creature can appear depending on either like their crimes or simply the origin of the legend. The most common one, and kind of the most gruesome and kind of funny, is that the corpse abnormally bloats and then comes to life. Hence, like the wooden stake through the heart would then deflate the corpse and it cannot bloat again and come to life. Another way a creature can appear is as this strange butterfly, biting people and drinking their blood, kind of like vampires. It is important to know that both werewolves and vampires are often used synonymously in some Slavic cultures. So both would wreak havoc, but their main difference would be that the vampire drinks blood while the werewolf does not. Now, in order to protect themselves from werewolves, what old Slavic people would do back in the day is that after someone had passed away, people would be on the watch, or keep an eye on the corpse, especially if the person was particularly evil when they were alive. It's kind of what a wake would be nowadays. People would also make cuts on the skin so that the corpse cannot bloat. People would also keep their windows open so that the soul doesn't get trapped and can safely pass away to the other world. All mirrors would need to be covered with white sheets. And I actually heard about this one. My grandma would tell me that they used to, back in the day, cover the mirrors with white sheets when someone would pass away. And that this was done so that the soul of the person couldn't see themselves in the mirror, because sometimes they could then see their sins, which would then scare them away from passing over. So they might choose, to stay instead, which then that never leads to anything good. Now, if none of these precautional methods worked, and if the person still turned into a werewolf, there is always a wooden stake. But this wooden stake needs to be made from a hawthorn tree. Another thing that I had actually remembered when I was researching all of this for the video, it's this tradition that would always weird me out when I was younger. I mean, it still does, but it doesn't really happen anymore as much. That is that when people return from the funeral, everyone is supposed to wash their hands before they enter the house. And I remember us doing that when I was younger. Okay, so I have found that people used to believe that cemeteries and graveyards are spaces that are impure. So you don't want to bring that impurity into your home. I learned a lot about just my culture researching this. Some little things that you hear about in your day-to-day life or whatever, but you don't really assign any meaning to them. And then when you research it, it makes sense. Back in the day people used to do it. It's crazy. I mean, crazy, that's rude. I respect my ancestors. Please don't turn into werewolves and haunt me. Now let's move on to your stories. Okay, so this first story comes from Brazil. And this person says, I'm from Brazil, and here we have a bunch of variations of the tale. So I'll tell you the ones that I heard more frequently when I was a child and that I think are more popular. They can vary widely from region to region since my country is so huge. But I guess it's important to mention that I was born and raised in the state of Sao Paulo. The werewolf tale here is often told in rural regions of the state. In Brazil, our folklore is taken very seriously, and I can guarantee you that if you go to any really small town inside each state, at least one random local will be able to tell you a story about someone that they know that claims they met a folkloric figure in person, werewolves included. So, in here, werewolves are called lobisomem, where lobi is from the word lobo, that means wolf, and omem, that comes from the word homem, that means man, literally wolf man. The lobisomem, also I apologize if I'm butchering any of these words, the lobisomem is a cursed man that transforms only on full moon nights, killing people for instinct or to satisfy his hunger. In some places, people tell lobisomens prefer to eat babies that haven't been baptized. So people in those regions try to baptize their children as soon as they can. The curse of lycanthropy is said to be the result of a deal between a man and the devil. One can either be born a lobisomem or become one by being bitten. There's a bunch of versions of the tale that diverge in this aspect, but the most common are that the one that is bound to become lobisomem when he becomes a teenager may be, number 1, the 8th son born after 7 daughters. Number 2, the 7th male son of the family. Number 3, the 7th son of a man that was in the 7th son in his family. And number 4, the son of a woman and a priest. The bearer of the curse on the first Tuesday or Friday of a full moon, after he turns 13, becomes lobisomem. In some regions, they say lobisomem can only turn into a wolf when he's in the middle of a crossroads. People say that if the lobisomem cannot run across 7 cemeteries in a single night, he'll be stuck in a wolf form forever and can never unturn. That's a bad deal for a wolf. The lobisomem will normally unturn by the end of the night and at the start of the day, when the first rooster crows. They can only be killed by silver projectiles, preferably ones that were blessed by a priest. As I had said, Brazil is a really big and diverse, and if you ask someone else, they might tell you a different story, or simply add more details. Anyways, that's the basics. There are 2 things that kind of stick out to me in this story. First one is that there are so many references to number 7, and the second is that the werewolf needs to be in the middle of crossroads. Okay, so why do these stick out to me? Well, number 7 kind of is like a omen in my family. Probably shouldn't say this. People are gonna think I'm weird. But, I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, but nonetheless, it's weird. My uncle passed away in 2017. My other uncle, so my uncle's brother, passed away in 2007. Then my another uncle from my mom's side, so my mom's brother, he passed away in 97. Then my mom's father passed away in 87. Then, well, my grandpa's dad passed away in 77. Like, there is this weird pattern in my family that every 10 years a man dies. I mean, like I said, it's probably just a coincidence, but it's so weird, and this story just reminded me of that. Another thing about the crossroads, I definitely heard that in our lore. Like, people would always say that you don't want to find yourself at the crossroads on a full moon at midnight. Now, this isn't really related to werewolves. It's more so related to, like, witches. I always find it so interesting how, like, this person is from Brazil and I'm from Croatia, and there are all these similarities. It's so weird. It's super interesting. The next story comes from the Dominican folklore. This person says, I'm Dominican. Now, until 2 hours ago, when I went through a Google rabbit hole, I would have said we didn't have any werewolf-like creature in our mythology. Mostly we have spirits, demons, witches, and stuff like that. Some are helpful, not necessarily good though, and some harmful. The one that most resembles a werewolf is something called galipote, which has the ability to transform into things. The most common being animals, but also inanimate objects such as trees or rocks. It is said to enjoy confusing travelers and stalking them when they come to its territory. Some stories say that galipote is a man who was either cursed or made a pact with evil spirits. And this is what allows their shapeshifting. In some versions, they are also immune to harm and have eternal life, which they achieve by consuming the flesh and the blood of the innocents. And some other things that I'm not going to read because they're very not YouTube friendly. I will link it in the description though, if you want to read them by yourself. Anyways, a galipote that exclusively transforms into a dog-like creature is also called loup-garou. Also, I'm probably butchering all this, so sorry. Comes from the French loup-garou, which means a werewolf. I definitely butchered that French one. Oh, you know what's interesting? I'm going to Paris next week. And I'm obviously not very prepared in the language territory. Another version transforms into a big black bird and is called zancu or zangano. Weird to me since zangano is A make bee/drone, not a bird, but whatevs. It can also become invisible if it so desires. Last, the only way to kill a galipote is by making a cross from wood cut with a sanctified machete. Salt and holy water, according to one source. The wood must be cut on a Good Friday. This person actually told me to look into it a bit further because there is apparently a lot more to the legend than what they were able to put in their post. So I did, and they were right. There is a lot more to explore in this legend. So what I found is that this is a dog-like creature and that they are very cruel and violent. These creatures can transfer its desires to animals, and therefore they can make animals do their wishes for them, which is like really mean. If you encounter them though, these beings are thought to misdirect travelers in the forest, scaring people, and also redirecting sleepwalkers, which that's just rude. You're not even awake. These are almost like the kindest things that they can do to you. Like if you're lucky, they'll just scare you. I really don't want to go way too deep into this story because, like I had said before, this is not really a YouTube friendly. So I'd say if you're interested, look into it yourself. But be warned because these stories are really disturbing. Our last werewolf lore story comes from the United States. And this is what this person says. I love listening to folklore and fairy tales from different countries because they always have such interesting twists and differences. I'm from the US, so our lore is pretty standard and probably originated in Europe before all the settlers came over. We sometimes call werewolves lichen or lycanthropy from the word lycanthropy, meaning an affliction that allows you to turn into a werewolf. Typically, in stories, werewolves are made by biting or scratching others. But I think there are also regions and lore that considers the ability for a werewolf woman to birth werewolves too, without needing to bite or scratch the baby. Also, in many stories, werewolves lose control of themselves and their senses during the full moon. So it's like you don't even remember or know anything that you did. A big trope in stories is for someone to not even know that they're a werewolf. They just wake up in places or maybe find bloody clothes in the wash, but with no idea it was them. Not sure if this is typical outside of the US, but I found it funny that many of our occult type fairy tales and stories revolve a lot around knowing it's you or what's happening, thus lessening your responsibility or culpability for the terrible things you did. That's just kind of the American way. LOL. Not my fault. I didn't know. I don't have as much cool knowledge as you of the word or language behind it all, but I hope this was still interesting nonetheless. Yes, it was very, very interesting to read. While we are on the topic of the US and the Americas, I just wanted to say that I did want to include skinwalkers in this video. I had learned that among Navajos, skinwalkers are actually quite a taboo topic, so I am going to respect that. I just wanted to acknowledge it. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a werewolf mythology. Now let me hear your stories in the comment section below. I really do think that this is important. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It will mean a lot to me. If you want to watch more of my videos, I'll put a playlist down in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.